Hey guys, welcome to part 3 of What If Naruto Became the Surgeon of Death. If you enjoyed the video then like, share and subscribe and also comment your thoughts as it inspires me to make more such videos, and remember to check out my playlist section for other interesting stories. So let's get started. Chapter 5, A Bloody Start. A wise man once said that, when one makes a plan that you should think 3 moves ahead of your opponent, and this was a bit of advice that Naruto had taken to heart most of his life when he had decided to leave the village of Konoha to seek his destiny in life elsewhere. Making a plan was fairly easy when you know so much about the ones you are making it against. So when the Yamanaka invaded his mind in an attempt to try and brainwash him into serving Konoha against his own free will and failed to accomplish his mission, he knew that whoever sent the man in the first place would try again. It was true that he had no clue as to when that secondary invasion of his mind would happen, but he did plan for it ahead of time because in truth he wanted it to happen. For years he had used a blood clone, the second one he ever made since the first one was imperfect, to study the brain thoroughly. He had hundreds of books on the subjects, the brains of the foolish shinobi who tried to hurt him into compliance, since the removal of the organ would leave said person dead. But since he killed those people, it was not a problem since they were dead already. While Naruto would never admit it to anyone, not Faust, his own mother, or even his closest of friends and girlfriend, he had only one true fear in life. While on the outside he was a calm, collected person of a man unless provoked by an enemy of any kind, but that fear had been with him for years. His greatest fear was the loss of his memories, and by that he meant either through natural illness or via alteration like the Yamanaka was capable of doing with their fucking family jutsu. He feared about it at first because he saw what it could do to haunt you when he suffered nightmares because of Ino until he was 9, but nowadays that fear was only increased due to the fact that if he forgot what he knew, then he would not be able to help others anymore, since no one had his powers that he had been gifted when he ate the fruit he had as a young lad. This was why he did so much medical research, so that he could teach it to others so that there would be other doctors to heal when his time in this world was up. Sure, they would not be able to do everything he was capable of, seeing that his powers were one of a kind, but they would be the closest things to it if shown how. So he had spent so much time trying to find a means to counter such a thing from happening, and what made it even better was the fact that there were those who were suffering memory loss as well, who volunteered to try out his procedures to see if they could be cured. Now while he wished he could say that he got it right, and they were all good and healthy, that was not the case, and he had so many failures under his belt before he finally reached a breakthrough and found a cure. It was slow since it was basically reconstructing what had eroded over time, but he finally found the means to, and it made all the trial and error worth it in the end. The saving grace to the failures was that those he failed didn't suffer. Yet while he had made a scientific miracle of a breakthrough with curing memory-losing illnesses, he was still vulnerable to those damn Yamanaka and their fucking jutsu. He would always remember the nightmares, since even though he no longer suffered from them, the memories would always linger. His bullies had so enjoyed making his life miserable, mainly since the action of putting him down made them feel better about themselves, since their arrogance was never stomped out by their parents, so it was still there. Yet no matter what pain they put him through, he rose above it with the aid of his mother, whose love was the main force of his will to continue on with his life. When she died, it was his rage against the very man who sired him into this world only to deem him worthless and try to end him as well. So every time they saw their punching bag up and about once again, it only pissed them off, and began the process of hurting him all over again. None of them ever figured out how he constantly kept coming back when they belittled him as so, save for one. Ino. To many who saw her, she was a nice young girl, going through a bit of a fangirl phase with her fawning over Sasuke Uchiha. But that image was only a small fraction of the truth, since in reality she was one of the cruelest in that group of people, with only Naruto herself beating the two of them when it came to cruelty. She had followed him one night as he limped home, bleeding out of various spots with bruises and even more. She saw how Naruto's mother bandaged him up and spread healing ointment on his bruises. She saw how happy he was as she held him close and told him everything would be fine in the end. She then put him to bed and read a chapter of his favorite book to help him go to sleep, and as he dreamed pleasant dreams, Ino had rubbed her hands together and smirked since she now knew his weakness. The next day she had followed the two of them, as Naruto followed his mother to work, and when she went to do her job leaving Naruto in the main lobby, That was when Ino struck. She had learned her family jutsu a few months ago and had been dying to try it out on someone. So with the proper hand signs, she had infiltrated his mind and had begun to add false memories in the part of it that would affect his sleep. The nightmares were all the same with slight variations, which were simply his mother claiming to hate him as well as joining in on his pain as the others hurt him. This was the nightmare that plagued him till he was 9. And if it took the rest of his life, he would get her for doing this, since it was only after he left the village that he realized that she was the cause behind it, since he had no fears about his mother and she was the only one of the group of his bullies to have such an ability to implant it into his mind. Now here he was with the perfect specimen to initially unlock the means to make himself immune to the Yamanaka. He knew that he would never be able to just up and kidnap one, since he was not a monster like that. He was a doctor that did many inhuman things in the pursuit, that was true, but he was not going to commit crimes to get test subjects like that. This one was perfect since this one had attacked him first, so it was clearly self-defense, plus whoever this guy was part of an underground organization. This he knew since he was a member of Root. While he had no idea as to who ran the organization, he had fought enough of them to at least know their name. So with those factors in play, there was no backlash for what he planned to do, but that was later, since now Naruto was once again in his mind since it had been invaded yet again. Naruto stood for the second time in the past 24 hours upon the precipice of the hospital that symbolized his mindscape. Now while he was fairly certain that the intruder had no way to counter his defenses like last time, he was here, but he was just too pissed to even make the effort at this point. So he conjured up a simple switch that connected to a button that floated next to him. He flipped the switch, which then powered up the button that he immediately pushed once he saw the green light that showed that it had been powered up. The moment he pushed the button, a blaring alarm sounded throughout the building before all the lights shut off. The intruder to his mind stopped in his tracks when he saw this and immediately began to look around, since the last time the light went off while he was here, he had been attacked and decapitated, the action of which evicted him out of Naruto's mind before he could complete his mission. Yet this time Naruto hadn't even entered the building, and instead the entire place exploded in a geyser of blood that once more killed the man invading his mind. He woke up in the real world with a bit of a headache, but then again he essentially flushed his mind by doing what he did, so it was bound to hurt like it did. Luckily for him he came to before the Root Nin did, who was still covered in the crows that had dragged him into the operating room. Naruto quickly pulled a syringe out of its packaging and extracted a powerful paralysis drug, so that he could not move his body, and stabbed him in the arm and pushed the end of it down to inject it into the man's blood. Once he did, he sighed a breath of relief, since the unorthodox plan he had concocted had gone far better than he had possibly thought that it would when put into action. He thanked the crows for their aid in the plan, which they cawed their acknowledgement of his praise before they poofed back to their summoning realm. He picked the man up and placed him on the operating table, where he then strapped him down tight so that when the drugs eventually wore off then he could still not escape. "I know you can't speak," said Naruto as he walked over to the door of the cabinet where he kept all his medical tools, once he sterilized them so that they could be used again later. He took out the ones he was going to need as well as an IV needle and a bag to collect some blood. "So I'll not ask question when I know for a fact that the drug I injected you with prevents you from talking back. You were an absolute dumbass of an idiot to try and enter my mind for the second time after I warned you against it. Yet now that you tried yet again when I stated that I serve no one, you find yourself in this particular situation. You see, I have been waiting for the chance to pick the brain of a Yamanaka like you, and since you attacked my mind, twice I am able to do it without issue. So allow me to explain what I am going to do. I am going to dissect your head and remove your brain, and then I am going to tear it apart so that I full grasp how your clan does as they do with the mental invasions. Then I am going to find a means to counter it forever so that your clan can't fuck with my mind again. So rejoice, since your death will be in the name of science and mean something other than to die for a pointless cause such as enslaving an unwilling person." Naruto then walked over and put on his thick gloves that he used for this sort of thing, since it was a far messier procedure than usual. Once he had them on, he clicked his fingers to set up a room. Once activated, Naruto smirked as he used a knife to make the first cut into his unwilling test subject. 15 hours later. Naruto had finally done what he had set out to do. He wiped the sweat off his forehead since this had been quite a challenge to complete and even more so to apply it to himself. He had found that genetic mutation that let the Yamanaka do as they did, and once there he did thousands of tests with various results until he found the perfect one that he wanted to apply. With the formula completed, he mixed it up perfectly and then used his blood clone to strap him down with a tightened strap for his head, so it could not move in the slightest, as well as kept his eyes open. The formula had to be injected at an upward angle through the bottom of his left eye into the part of the brain that it needed to be. The pain was excruciating, with his screams echoing throughout the room. But the pain only increased even more so when the plunger was pressed down and the formula was injected into his brain. Once the syringe was extracted and the straps removed, he held his eye in an attempt to try and ease the pain in some manner, which it didn't at all. He felt like his head was on fire for what seemed like hours, yet it was only minutes before the pain finally stopped. His body had broken out in a massive cold sweat, and he laid down on his back for a bit to get his strength back since the procedure had taken a lot out of him. Once he could get to his feet, he had his blood clone do the standard full physical he always gave himself when he modified himself in some way, shape or form to ensure that he was still healthy. Once he was given the okay from himself, he conjured up the door to his hotel room, so as to sleep this all off, and as he did, his blood clone completed his final task before he dispelled, which was to dispose of the body after harvesting the rest of the usable organs for future donors, and burned the rest of it away. 3 days later, Naruto woke up refreshed as he got ready for the day him and his friends had waited for the past few days. He smirked since he was honestly looking forward to this day, and he was looking forward to doing something else besides healing people. Sure, that was his calling in life, but he could still enjoy other things as well. So after he finished getting clean, he put on the new outfit he had paid a tailor to make him and wanted to wear it on a special occasion, such as this. His new outfit was a lot like his last one, but with a different design. He wore the same hat, but that was because it was special in many ways that had yet to be revealed as of yet. He wore a red short-sleeved t-shirt under a jet black button-up sleeveless vest. He wore dress pants with 2 crisscrossed crimson belts with a skull buckle on the front that had a chain attached to the pocket, which itself was attached to an antique watch that he had been given as payment a while back from an elderly man who had no physical cash. It worked fine, and the design on the outside fit his attire perfectly since on it was the carved-out image of the Shinigami. He wore thick black dress shoes which themselves were custom-made and unique. Yet what made his attire perfect was the symbol that was emblazoned onto the back of his attire in white. In the years that Naruto had been taught by Faust in the medical field, the man had come to help him understand his powers far better than he could have ever learned himself if he had tried to do it on his own. Faust was a well-traveled man who had done so much and seen so many things in his long extended lifetime, so much in fact that Naruto had questioned if Faust was immortal, but he was never given an answer to that question. Faust had left Naruto alone for a few days to obtain something that could help him since he remembered it from a while back. And what he returned with was simply 2 books, one a journal and the other a book on the subject of the powerful force he was capable of using, known as Haki. He had learned that there were various types, and while they would have been useful in his life, he had only one instead of all the more common ones. His was known as Conqueror's Haki, said to be used by 1 in a million at the time when it was more frequent, which made him question how he had been given this power at all since Haki seemed to have died out. But that bit of information was minuscule in retrospect of the information contained in the journal. It was very old, and as such he took the utmost care to keep it intact so as to preserve it. It was written by the man who himself had the power of the cursed fruit he had eaten, and it was quite a coincidence that he had the same nickname that Naruto himself was given for his actions. The name of the man? Trafalgar Law. This man had been a pirate captain of his era, which had long since passed, and had been an amazing doctor, the likes that no one else could ever hope to become with his skills. His journal had extensive knowledge on his abilities and various unorthodox procedures as well that Naruto practiced and used himself. So in honor of the man not only whose name he had acquired but his power as well, he emblazoned the symbol the man once used for his flag on his ship onto his back. In a way the man had been reborn through him, and he would make the man proud. And judging by what the man wrote in the journal about his own quest for vengeance against the man who killed the man who saved his life, he had a feeling that law would encourage him in his efforts. With his new clothes on his person, he left the room and pulled out his cane as he walked by his teammates' room. He used the end of the cane to tap the door several times, which caused them to come out as well since they were ready to go and had just been waiting for him to knock. They both took a look at him and blushed since in their minds, he looked fairly handsome as well as sharply dressed. Then once they were done, blushing they followed him along to the academy where the test was taking place. Not much happened on the way there except for most of the other applicants looking at how he was dressed since it was not shinobi attire in any sense of the word. But then again Naruto didn't care since he was not a shinobi. There had been a bit of confusion with many of the people who were trying to enter a classroom yet were being denied entrance by two men who were there to try to deter them away. But the trick of the whole thing was that the test was on the next floor up, not this one. Naruto simply held his finger up to his lips to tell the girls to keep silent about it and kept walking towards the proper room. Once there they were greeted by the combined killing intent of multiple shinobi from various villages. Naruto simply sighed since he had to make a point to these people that he was not one to be underestimated. So with a serious look on his face, he blasted his haki throughout the room. The mysterious energy made all within the room fall to their knees in a cold sweat. They looked at Naruto in a new light and realized that he was more of a threat than they thought. The three of them then stood off to the side and waited for those who would show up before the official test starts. And like he assumed the rookies of Konoha all showed up, along with a few more that he didn't even know were here, like the Suna team, that consisted of all three of the Kasuga's children. It was shortly afterwards that the test began, with the warning to not cheat on the written test portion of it. Naruto didn't care honestly about that and answered the questions with nonsense answers. He was never trained as a shinobi, so of course, he wouldn't know the actual answers. Plus the fact that he was doing all this just to test himself not to advance his position since doctors had no ranks. Multiple people were caught cheating and eliminated, but it was only near the end that something out of the ordinary happened. The person in charge of this portion of the test got up and told them of a final question that if they failed to get right would mean they would be stuck as a genin forever, which once again Naruto didn't care about since he was a doctor. So after all that was said and done and the written portion of the test was done with, Anko had bust through the window and told them to get their asses to the forest of death for the next portion of the exams. They arrived at the place and were told to sign legal waivers that made it so the village would nor could they be held accountable for anything that happened such as injury or death. Naruto had filled out the form and handed the form to Anko, who had stopped him for a second, and then handed him a stack of bills as well as a scroll with the kanji for Earth on it. He pocketed the money since it was the full payment for the procedure he was going to perform on her when everything was ready. He thanked her for the money and assured her that there was a money-back guarantee if things didn't go as they should. She simply smiled and thanked him for actually trying to help her, which no one else was trying anymore. The rules of the second part of the exam were simple. There were two different types of scrolls that were handed out to those participating. They had to have one of each of them before they made their way to the center tower and then there they would pass. So with the instructions being fully clear, the teams all went to their own gates and saw them open so that they could head inside to start the test. Naruto and his team had charged in all while expecting to be attacked at any given point since it was expected at this point. But to their surprise, there was none. For 2 whole days, there was nothing, neither when they traveled or while the girls slept while he kept watch after popping one of his pills to stay awake, so they could get some sleep. It was only on the 3rd day that they finally met another team, which turned out to be Squad 10 with Choji, Ino, and Shikamaru. Why, asked Naruto with a sigh, out of all the people we could have possibly faced in these exams, were you people the first ones we meet? Troublesome, said Shikamaru, who had to agree with Naruto's statement. Shikamaru had heard about Naruto via rumors around town about the Surgeon of Death, and if any of them were even a fraction of the truth, then this would not end well for his squad, so if they wanted to get out of this unscathed, then they would have to play this smart. Finally we get to actually fight someone, said Kuretsuchi in joy since the last few days had been boring. It wouldn't have been so bad if Naruto had not brought his girlfriend so she could use her time to try and seduce Naruto while here, but since Haku was not only here, but in a relationship with the man she wanted or herself that was not possible. Hold up, said Shikamaru as he held up his hands to try and calm the situation down. Maybe we can come to some sort of trade-off and leave as strangers. What the hell are you talking about? Asked Choji as he ate chips. We can take these guys. Choji, said Shikamaru with a sigh. Listen to me when I say that you do not want to fight that man as we are right now. He is known as the Surgeon of Death and has been known to kill far more powerful shinobi. I'm glad that someone in your group knows about who I am, said Naruto with a smirk as he held his cane out towards them. And so what was this about a trade-off I heard about? What scroll do you need? We have extras. We need a heaven scroll, said Naruto simply. Shikamaru pulled the scroll they needed out and tossed it to them. You are lucky that I am not like the rest of you, since once paid I do as I am paid to do. I accept your payment, so move along and pray that we don't meet like this again, since you don't have anything else we need on you. They took the hint and left the immediate area once told. Why didn't you let Use fight them? Asked Haku in a voice that all but demanded that he explain himself, or there would be hell to pay. He knew this tone very well, since there was a date night he missed and had no good excuse for. He had no idea that Haku had such knowledge about acupuncture points to paralyze a person, but he did now, once she hit him with so many of them and left him there. Apparently icicles in the bloodstream were a weakness of his and he was very happy that she was the only one who could use such abilities. It's because you will need your strength for what is to come, said Naruto simply as he began to walk forward, but he stopped after taking a few steps. He looked at the scrolls in his hands for a minute before he tossed them to Haku to hold on to. Why are you giving these to me? Asked Haku with a raised eyebrow. You guy head along to the tower, said Naruto as he looked around. For a minute, there is a weed I wish to pick while here for research purposes, and now seems like the perfect time to acquire it since we are already here. Okay, said Haku with a kind smile on her face. If there was one thing she knew about her boyfriend, besides his cock size and his desire to protect those he held close by any means possible, was that when he wanted to go and collect something for research purposes, there was no deterring him from doing so. So she as well as Kuretsuchi made their way to the center tower to end their part in this portion of the exam. Naruto could only smile since he was glad he found a woman to love who understood him like she did. But that smile disappeared not too long after they had left. I know that you are there, said Naruto with a sigh, so there is no use trying to hide from me. He waited for a minute, but no one came out to greet him, which slightly ticked him off about it. So he opened his hand as if to stretch his fingers for a bit. He then swiped the air with his arm, doing so caused the wires in his gloves to slice the tree surrounding him into sections of various sizes. Such a temper for someone so young, said a snake-like voice as a figure emerged from the rubble. You should take a few deep breaths and calm yourself. I am a doctor, said Naruto with a smirk, so I know what I need to relax. I don't need a second opinion from a stranger. And especially not from the snake Sannin Orochimaru himself. Oh-ho, said the now-named Sannin as he walked towards Naruto, but remained a bit of a distance away from him to be on the safe side. So it would seem that even the so-called Surgeon of Death has heard of me. Hard not to hear about a man that does such horrific experiments to people, said Naruto with a shrug of his shoulders, plus I was born here, so I know about you. So a native citizen of Konoha is the infamous surgeon, chuckled Orochimaru to himself. It seems that this village breeds the most unique of infamous shinobi in the world. Is there a point to all this? Asked Naruto as he pulled out his pocket watch and looked at the time with a bored look on his face since he really didn't see the point of Orochimaru talking to him at all. Because if not, then I have other things I wish to accomplish and a tight window of time to do so. I just wanted to meet the man behind the rumors, said Orochimaru as he paced around Naruto as he talked, and I have to say that you are as formidable as they say, you are judging by your aura alone. But while I am here I wish to offer you a chance to join me. Imagine what the two of us could accomplish if we put our minds together. I have already accomplished what you could not, said Naruto with a shake of his head, so I don't see the need to work with a man who only really cares about extending his own lifetime instead of aiding others. We are polar opposites on this subject. And what exactly do you mean by it when you say that you have accomplished what I have not? Asked Orochimaru with a tone of genuine curiosity since he wanted to know. Why, for a self-claimed genius that you say you are, said Naruto as his eyes changed to the Sharingan he took from Itachi, something that Orochimaru looked at in shock since he recognized the things that he himself had tried to take from the man years ago and had failed in his attempts. The fact that you fail to understand me throws doubt on that. Impossible, said Orochimaru angrily. How did you acquire Itachi's eyes? I killed the man and took them from him, said Naruto as he blinked. When he did, his eyes had turned back to normal, simple as that. And you honestly expect me to believe that you, a mere child, were able to kill someone like Itachi Uchiha? I don't care what you believe really, said Naruto with a raised eyebrow. I did, and I have his eyes, because of it. So the real question now is, what exactly are you going to do about it? Oh, nothing, said Orochimaru, since it is not you who I am here for. Oh really, said Naruto with a quizzical look, and who, pray tell, are you here for? Somebody from my team. Oh no, said Orochimaru with a wave of his hand. Perish the thought. Well, that's good for you, said Naruto with a chuckle as he flexed his fingers a bit, because if it was then I would have to kill you. So you are perfectly fine with me doing what I am doing when it comes to others and only care when it is your own group. I am a doctor, not a shinobi. I stay out of politics. So you will have to deal with the repercussions, not me. But let's go back a second and recount the fact that you honestly believed that you can kill me. I am not Itachi Uchiha, and I will not die so easily. No, said Naruto with a laugh, you will die easier than him. Naruto then flicked his finger. This caused one of his wires to slice Orochimaru's head clean off, but it then dissolved and turned back into the mud from which it was made from. But Naruto saw with his Sharingan while it was activated that the thing he had killed was a mud clone. He smirked slightly as he felt the teeth try and sink their way into his neck. He felt them chip as they bit into steel instead of flesh. What the hell? Shouted Orochimaru as he retracted his head and held his mouth in pain as the blood seeped out from the broken tooth. What did you do to me? I told you I accomplished what you failed to do, said Naruto with a laugh. You will pay for this, he said in anger, but while he would have made another attempt to try and mark the boy with his curse seal, he was on a timetable, as well, so he had to go now. He knew with Minato and Danzo with their root forces, he would have to be quick if he wanted to place his curse seal on the person. He infiltrated the village to put it on. He hadn't planned on trying to mark another person, but the Surgeon of Death was here and the chance was just too much to pass up. He had heard what the brat could do and wanted to get him to join him willingly, so as to mark him later when he understood his bloodline more. Now that the brat showed more abilities than he expected, he would most definitely mark him for a future body. He hissed in anger and threw a few smoke bombs to block Naruto's vision, before he tried to leave. Yet he screamed in pain as he felt his arm get cut off at the shoulder. Did you really expect to try and curse me and get away unscathed? Asked Naruto as he pulled his hand back. Orochimaru's now severed hand flew into his own. Orochimaru stopped for a second to glare at him before he vanished in a swirl of leaves. Just something to remember this moment by, said Naruto to himself before he opened his operating room door and placed the arm in cold storage. He was unsure as to what he could learn from it, but it was still something to look into in his spare time. Well, now that I dealt with that unexpected guest, said Naruto as he walked out of the room and sent the door away since it was no longer needed. Now if I can just get to my destination without further interruption of any sort. As soon as he said that, no less than 24 root shinobi appeared and surrounded him. One day, said Naruto with a sarcastic tone in his voice, and I honestly don't know when it will happen, but I will learn eventually to not ask stupid questions that will jinx me. Alright, let's get this over with. So let's skip the whole "you will serve our master" speech, and just get to the fighting bit where I kill all of you and head off to my destination. The root shinobi all looked at each other for a bit before the leader of the group stepped forward. Well, this is different, said Naruto with a raised eyebrow, but still whipped out his cane in preparation. Never had a volunteer come forward before. Naruto then swirled his hand in the air for a second. The root members who had come to try and kidnap him for what seemed like the 10th time in his life stopped for a few seconds before they fell into pieces. Okay, said Naruto as he pulled out a book filled with information about plants, so before yet another group appears to mess with me, let's find those plants I wanted to find while here. He then set out to find what he said he would find. It was true that he sent his group away to deal with the immediate threat of Orochimaru since they were not ready to fight the man, but he was being honest about finding the plants. They were strong, yes, but Orochimaru was infamous for the tactics. He used to win any and all fights that even some of the most infamous of shinobi have fallen to. The only means to beat the man was through sheer unpredictability, and dear Kami Naruto was nothing more than that word to the fullest when it came to fighting. So with that in mind he set out to find them. 2 days later, Naruto stood with his group, who he noticed were glaring at each other heavily for some reason that, when he asked about, they turned their glares to him, so he backed off for his own safety, along with the rest of the squads that had passed the second part of the exam as well. The one squad that caught his eye was Squad 7 since he saw Sasuke return with them, but he was taken away shortly after he had arrived from some strange markings that had appeared on his neck. Naruto had faced the young man twice and knew that he did not have such markings on his neck before now. So Naruto looked at this and guessed that this was person that Orochimaru went off to mark after he fled from Naruto. So while Sasuke was obviously getting some sort of treatment that would try and remove the seal off the boy, which he was fairly sure would not work since Anko's had not been removed and she had won far longer than Sasuke, the rest of the shinobi who passed the second part of the exam stood and watched as Minato told the reason why they had these exams. Naruto was writing in his notebook since he could care less why they did it, since he was a doctor it mattered not to him. But eventually the next part started, where they were told that they would be pit against one another to have the numbers for the final portion of the exam. Minato clicked a button that revealed a board where names would be displayed to announce the two people fighting. And to no surprise whatsoever to Naruto, his name was the first, and he could only smirk about his opponent. Kiba Inuzuka. This guy was a real asshole, not just to him but to many others as well. He acted like he was better than others when he knew he wasn't and hit on women who were disgusted by it and didn't want him to since he thought that as the alpha male that he was allowed to do so since it was his right. But the reason that Naruto hated him with a passion was the prick was the one who led the group of his bullies to him with his sense of smell. No matter where Naruto hid, Kiba would find him. Then when he got his fucking dog Akamaru, he would have the mutt piss on him when he was beaten into the ground to insult him, stating that Naruto was a Zeta male with no chance to ever rise up and should do the world a service and just die. Naruto would take great pleasure in showing this alpha male what a Zeta male could do. The two of them walked to their starting positions while the rest of the participants walked up to the balcony so that they could observe the fight from a safe distance. Well, if it isn't Kiba Inuzuka, said Naruto as he twirled his cane a bit before he slammed it down and began to lean off of it. Oh, cruel irony. So you know who I am, said Kiba with an arrogant smirk on his face since the fact that someone he didn't know knew about him only fueled his ego far more than being part of one of the founding clans did already. Then again, an alpha, such as me, should be known throughout the elemental countries. My infamy will grow and all women will swoon at my feet and just beg to be bred as my bitch. No to all that, said Naruto with a mental gag that this man was not only so very sexist since he assumed that women were simply his to breed, but the image of him breeding alone was enough to make him gag. I simply know you from the past. Oh, is that right? Said Kiba with a raised eyebrow as he stood there with that smirk still on his face and his arms crossed. Naruto so wanted to slap that smirk off his face right now, but he would hold back since he had a plan that would scar this asshole for the rest of his life. I am surprised that you don't recognize me really, said Naruto in mock hurt. You knew me so well when we were children that it hurts me to see you forget me so easily. Said Kiba as he rubbed his chin in thought. He looked at Naruto closely from top to bottom, but no matter how long he looked he was still unable to recognize him. Sorry to say that you are not familiar to me in any way. That obviously means that you weren't all that important if I don't remember you as you say I should. Well, now that I think about it myself, said Naruto with a chuckle, it's easy to see why you don't recognize me. Well, besides the fact that you only think with your dick, which I am guessing is rather small since you basically claim you have to rape women to breed, I don't look the same as I did in the past. Oh, I am so going to fuck you up for saying that, growled Kiba enraged that the size of his genitals was put into question. Odd choice of words for this moment, said Naruto with a shake of his head, and for the record I am straight so no thanks on the offer. I'll fucking kill you. Oh, said Naruto with a smirk with mock sympathy, is the alpha male getting pissed at the words of a Zeta? Naruto's words caught Kiba completely off guard since he didn't expect it. In all his life he had only ever called one person that Azita since the boy had been pathetic to not only him, but the rest of his group of friends. His eyes opened wide when the truth hit him like a ton of bricks. "Rag boy?" he asked. This caused all the others who had bullied Naruto alongside him to open their eyes in shock as well since this was a surprise to them as well. They all assumed that Naruto had died somewhere pathetic and alone and had gone off and bullied others until they grew out of it years later. While they no longer bullied, their arrogance still was there for all to see. "In the flesh," said Naruto calmly. Rag Boy was the name they all called him since his clothes were basically patched together rags, which he was happy with since he was warm. While inside he was seething at the fact that the nickname he utterly hated was brought back up again after all these years. He calmed himself since his plan would make up for all this. "Good to see that you remember me. I have to admit that I look different with nicer clothes and well-kept hair, so like I said it is easy to understand why you didn't recognize me." Kiba looked at him in shock for a few seconds more before his look of shock turned to one of humor. He began to laugh so hard that he doubled over and held his stomach as the tears fell from his eyes since he was laughing so hard. Naruto stood there calmly and let him laugh, since in the end, he wouldn't be laughing anymore. "I can't believe that such a worthless person, such as you is my opponent," said Kiba as he finally stopped laughing and was able to talk properly. "To think that you survived when we all thought you had died." "Well, I am alive and well," said Naruto with a shrug. "No thanks to the likes of you." "You know what," said Kiba with an arrogant smirk, "I'm in a good mood right now. So how about a deal? If you get on your knees and beg me not to hurt you like old times, I just might not." "I learned when I was 5 that you were a liar when you gave me that option," said Naruto with yet another shake of his head, "and I am not the same person I was before. So how about this for a deal? You get on your knees and forfeit the match, thus solidifying yourself forever as my personal bitch. Or you could fight me, but be warned that if you go that particular route that I will break you in a manner that you will never recover from." Kiba didn't even answer with words to his offer and charged forward in a primal rage since the person who he saw as so far beneath him was now demanding that he submit. This would not stand in his mind and he would hurt Naruto in such a manner that he would never look up again from. But his attacks were not connecting to his intended target since Naruto was easily able to dodge everything he threw at him. Kiba was throwing punches wildly since he was fueled by rage, so his move set was so easily predictable and dodge-able. Naruto grew tired of dodging after a minute and swept Kiba off his feet with a sweep kick. He then jumped back since he wanted to get some space between them. "Damn it, hold fucking still," shouted Kiba as he got back to his feet and prepared to attack again. "Not so easy to hurt me when you don't have the numbers to overpower your target, is it?" asked Naruto with a frown since he always remembered them ganging up on him. "I don't need them to kick your worthless ass. Yet you haven't landed a single blow. Neither have you." "That's because I didn't want to just yet," said Naruto simply as he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He pulled out a vial filled with his blood and crushed it in his hand. He felt as the thick warm liquid moved down his arm and onto his cane. Minato looked at this with analytical eyes since he was curious as to how his bloodline worked. He didn't have much else other than the few rumors he had heard and what little his own daughter told him he could do, so this was the perfect time to see it in action. Naruto waited for a few seconds as the blood pooled into the open mouth of the skull that topped his cane, and when it did, he quickly turned around and swiped down as the blood turned into a curved blade, making the cane into a scythe. The blade met flesh as it sliced Akamaru right down the center. The mutt had been slowly sneaking around the arena, so as to attack from behind, thinking that he could catch Naruto by surprise. He had no idea that Naruto was fully aware of his location and simply waiting for him to attack as he did. The mutt was cut cleanly in half and perished from it as was natural. But before the two sections of the body even hit the floor, Naruto raised his hand and pulled the blood from the body out and formed into an orb in his hand. He pulled out another vial and funneled that blood as well as the blood used to form the blade into it to use for later. Sure, it was dog's blood, but with his bloodline any type of the stuff could be used as a weapon. "Akamaru!" shouted Kiba in shock that he had just witnessed his canine companion had just been killed like he had. He ran forward and grabbed a hold of the two halves that the mutt had become. Tears began to form in his eyes since his friend was now dead, but while the sadness was there, the rage began to grow as well. That mud has finally been put down like it should have years ago, said Naruto with a smirk, and now I had to be the one to do it. Was all Kiba was able to see that as his rage grew exponentially. Naruto could see his eyes change in a way that looked more like a rabid animal than human, but then again his clan were akin to the canines they partnered up with. I don't like being pissed on, said Naruto with a serious tone, or assholes in general. How dare you? How dare I, asked Naruto sarcastically as he placed his hand on his chest to emphasize his point, this coming from the boy who made it a hobby of his to hunt down a child, his own age, who couldn't defend himself and thought it was so fun he repeated the event again and again. We were fucking kids. Yes we were, said Naruto with as he looked down in a manner that his eyes were covered by his hat but your actions have consequences. And unfortunately for you, the boy who you bullied for so long, grew stronger and channeled the hate into a drive to better myself. Your actions have led to this, and I even gave you a way to leave unscathed from this, but you arrogantly thought that you had already won. So this is your own fault, not mine, and you get to live with it for the rest of your life. Kiba at this point was too far gone, and got into a stance to use one of his more powerful techniques, fang over fang. While the power was halved due to Akamaru being killed, yet his mind was not thinking rationally and just wanted to make Naruto suffer for the death of his friend. So in massive black surge of energy, he charged forward in a rotating form that was meant to cut like a massive buzzsaw. Naruto didn't even move from his spot and simply held his hand up to intercept the attack. He used his steel release to harden it up, so when the attack connected to his outstretched hand, literal sparks flew out from the friction of the attack hitting metal. Naruto was pushed back slowly as Kiba kept his attack up, but it wasn't doing the damage that he wanted it to. Minato and the others watching this were surprised as well, since this was not something they thought would happen. They had at least assumed that Naruto would dodge the attack, not block it somehow with his gloved hand, which only made them question what the hell the glove was made out of. But eventually Naruto grew bored with this as well and channeled more power to his hand. This caused it to glow to the point that it was even visible with the glove on. Naruto smirked as he then expelled the power outwards in a controlled explosion that blasted Kiba back quite a distance. Kiba was slow to get back to his feet, and he felt as his face was bleeding. Genin Kiba, said Minato in genuine concern for the young boy's safety. Tsun was a friend of his and he didn't want her son to get too hurt. Do you wish to continue? Yeah said Naruto with a laugh, do you want to keep going? Cause I can understand if you do. It just means that I win and you are now even worse than a Zeta male. I wish to continue, growled Kiba, who was not going to allow that insult to go unpunished. He didn't know how he was going to do it, but he would make Naruto pay. Naruto simply remained in place since he was not intimidated in the slightest. He was however hoping that Kiba would continue and had prepared for it if he did. But he understood how Kiba thought, and how to goad him into fighting this one-sided fight. Come then Kiba, said Naruto as he held up his and opened his hand, so it was an open palm. Minato saw him do this and immediately knew what was going to happen. He tried to stop it by signaling his shinobi to stop it, but by then it was too late. Kiba had charged forward to attack yet again, but thin red lines appeared out of nowhere around his arms and legs. Naruto then closed his grip, doing so tightened the wires that he had channeled chakra through so as to superheat them up. The wires cut his arms and legs off in sections as well as cauterized the wound so Kiba would not bleed out. Kiba fell face first into the ground as he screamed in pain from the loss of his limbs, but it wasn't just his arms and legs he had lost, since the angle the wires cut into his legs also cut off his cock and balls as well. The people watching turned green in the face as they saw this happen, since it was gruesome in every aspect of the word. Medic Nin appeared to get the boy to the hospital for immediate surgery. Naruto simply smirked as he saw them take the boy and his severed limbs as well. They were going to try and heal him, but the damage was irreversible since he had cut the limbs into sections that were cauterized as well. Naruto made his way to head up the stairs, but his path was blocked by Minato, who looked extremely pissed. Why did you do this to Kiba? Asked Minato in a pissed voice. I warned him that if he fought me that I would break him in a manner that he would not recover, said Naruto as walked around the man who sired him. Don't blame me for the results when he had the chance to leave. You didn't have to ruin his career as a shinobi like you did, shouted Minato behind him. This caused Naruto to stop walking to talk. The world knows what I do to those who I dislike, for reasons ranging from threats to friends and loved ones to threat for my services. This is what I do to those who I hate with unbridled rage. I won't kill them, no, since that is too easy, but I will put them in a situation that they so wish that I did. Remember that bit of information for the future. Naruto then walked up the stairs since he had said what he wanted to say, and it left Minato with a cold chill as he began to sweat in fear. Chapter 6: A Sacred Past. Naruto walked up the stairs to take his place next to his squad since his match was over, and he was not going to fight another one at this point since they were only expected to fight the once to dwindle the numbers down to half of what they were now. Naruto could only chuckle to himself as the various Chunin hopefuls went far out of their way to get out of his own path since, after what he did to Kiba, they were genuinely terrified of the guy. Most of them had grew up to become shinobi and thought that there would be grand adventure and fortunes to be earned in their futures, but Naruto had just injected them all with a harsh dose of reality with his actions. No one expected Kiba to become a limbless torso, and now that she saw someone, their own age, with such abilities, not only capable, but willing to do that to someone, it did not bode well for many of them, and they were honestly considering a new career path. Minato took a minute to make sure that Kiba was in good hands with the medic Nin before he took out the button to start the next fight. But before he could press the button, multiple shinobi from other villages that had made it through the forest of death raised their hands and forfeited their chances of advancing. Minato was genuinely surprised to see so many people quit like that, but after seeing Kiba becoming crippled like he had, it was not wonder that they would do so. So when those who forfeited left the building to pack up their stuff in their rooms and go home, Minato called over one of his shinobi to look over the list of those still in this event. He saw that the numbers were far lower than he had expected and thought about it for a second, since they were just 2 people over the limit that they wanted for the third and final portion of the exam. So he did the most basic thing he could possibly think of and drew 4 names from a box to decide the 4 people who would fight, with the rest passing this portion and would head to the finals. Minato took the time to explain this to those still left since they had to know, and then pulled the names before he had them shown on the board. Gara versus Lee. Gara saw his name on the board and simply grunted, since to him, it didn't matter if he fought or not. But this did present the perfect moment to slate his bloodlust, as the voice in head was whispering into the dark recesses of his mind, which only made his insomnia from lack of years of sleep worse. So he put up 2 fingers up to use a jutsu and felt as the sand he controlled swirled around him, and he disappeared in the swirl of it. He then reappeared as the sand swirled around in the center of the arena, and then dispersed to show Gara standing there like he had moments ago on the balcony. Lee pumped his fist in joy that he would be able to show off all his skills that he had trained so long to master with his sensei. So he jumped from the balcony and landed on the ground and quickly got to his feet, and positioned himself into a fighting stance with one hand behind his back and one hand out with his fingers up, and used them in a come get me motion. I'm so very happy that I can still get the chance to fight in this part of the exam, said Lee with a smile on his face. He expected for Gara to say something back, but he just gave the young bushy-browed man a glare that could freeze even ice itself. They remained like this for a bit, and Naruto, as well as the others who still remained, all began to wonder just which one of the 2 combatants would be the one to make the first move. And to no one's surprise, it was Lee who charged forward to try and land the first blow of the match. He got close to Gara and then jumped up into the air and delivered a spinning kick towards Gara's face, but the problem with that was that Gara's sand blocked the kick without him moving so much as an inch from his starting position or even losing the glare on his face. Lee saw as the sand then morphed into a hand that tried to engulf him within it, but he was too quick for it to do so and jumped back just in time. Lee had been taught by his sensei from an early age to analyze his opponent for a weakness, and to his regret he was not able to see a clear one, since the sand seemed to be a factor that he would have to get past before he could inflict any sort of damage to his opponent in the first place. So with no other real options to work with at the moment, he continued his attacks, but every one of them was deflected by Gara's sand that shifted around, so Lee's kicks or his punches did not connect. A strand of sand tried to attack him from behind, but Lee was able to use a kunai to cut through it so that it was not in a solid enough mass to do more than blow sand in his face. He tried to use the kunai to try and cut through the sand that was protecting Gara himself, but that plan failed since the sand was thicker around him, so the kunai didn't cut through, and Lee was forced to dodge yet again as it tried to engulf him. Lee had to expertly dodge sand attacks from all around him, yet his intense training was paying off, since he was able to do so without breaking a sweat while doing so. He then threw some shuriken to see if that was a viable option to attack his opponent, but once again his efforts were thwarted by the damn sand that Gara had protecting him. Lee was starting to become a bit stressed over the fact that not only were none of his attacks working against Gara, but he had yet to even move from his spot since the match started in the first place. It was when he looked closely that the giant gourd on Gara's back was spilling out more sand that fell into the ground. But the thing that caught his attention was the fact that it was not pooling around his feet like it should have since it was hitting the ground, yet it wasn't. It was then that Lee felt the ground rumble and things, then went straight to hell in a handbasket. Lee tried to jump out of the way as multiple tendrils of sand burst out from the ground, but while he was able to dodge a number of them, he still failed in the end and was grabbed by the foot by one of them. Lee was then slammed into the wall hard, knocking the wind out of him since the pain was intense. Yet before he could catch his breath, his entire body was pummeled by fists made of sand, before he was then slammed hard into the ground near Gara with enough force to crack the ground into a spiderweb-like pattern. Lee tried to get up from this position, but Gara was not done since he dropped a massive mass of solid sand onto his back with enough force to break his spine. Lee cried out in pain as he felt his lower body go completely numb. The damage that was done to him had literally crippled him from the waist down. Gara began to smirk as he finally moved enough to lift his hand up so as to finally engulf Lee in his sand, so as to crush him in a bloody manner, but before he could do what he had planned to do, he was bombarded by several Jonin with water jutsu to soften his sand and extract Lee so he didn't die. "Lee!" shouted the boy sensei Mike Guy as he saw his prized student in such a situation, and it hurt him to see Lee like this. "What did he do to you?" Did I make you proud, sensei?" asked Lee before he coughed out blood that had pooled into his mouth. "Lee," said Guy as he held his student's hand as a form of comfort, "you will be fine. We just need to get you to the hospital and the doctors will fix you up." "I highly doubt they can," said Naruto, who appeared next to them, both out of the blue, which made Guy flinch since it was surprising. What was all Guy was able to say since he really had nothing else he could say in a situation like this. "I am saying that the damage done to his spine is too extensive to be healed in any hospital," said Naruto as he gave the young man a look to see just how badly Gara had hurt him. "How do you know this?" asked Guy in slight anger that this strange young man had come out of the blue, and said that his student's chances of recovery were basically zero. "You may have heard about me through rumors," said Naruto simply with a shrug of his shoulders. "My name is Naruto, and I am known throughout the elemental countries as the Surgeon of Death." This bit of information hit Guy in a manner that left him not only shocked, but completely white in the face as well. He had heard about Naruto from various rumors that had spread in the village, but he had assumed that the person who was dubbed such a name would be far older than Naruto was. But from what he had heard that Naruto was able to do, the boy obviously knew more about Lee's critical condition than he possibly could, since he was not a medic in any sense of the word. "Can you heal my student?" asked Guy hopefully, since he wanted his student to become a great shinobi in the future, and as he was right now he was unable to continue on with his career. "Actually I can," said Naruto with a smile. While he may have been cold to those who were his enemies as well as those he swore vengeance against, he was not to those he helped in the medical field. On the contrary, it made him feel good inside, since he knew his mother would have loved to see him help others like he did. "And that is why I am here right now, to offer you my services to heal the man. Please help my student," said Guy as he bowed his head to the point that it touched the ground as he begged for Naruto's assistance. The spectacle made Naruto feel a bit embarrassed since he didn't really expect it. Most people just knew that he did what he did for money, so there was no need to beg him like Guy was right now. "Okay," said Naruto with a sweat drop as he saw this, "there is no need to beg like that. I'll help your student, but it will cost a bit for the medical procedure. Whatever the price is, I will happily pay it," said Guy as the tears of joy began to flood out of his eyes. Naruto pulled his book of prices out and saw the various things he would have to heal to fix Lee and get him back into pristine condition. This is why a lot of his operations got expensive like they did, since the prices began to pile on, and the gross sum was larger than if the patient only had the one problem alone. So once the price was tallied up, he wrote it out on a receipt and handed it to Guy to see with his own eyes. Guy's eyes bugged out at the high price since he did not have that much on him or even in his account at the moment. "I am guessing from your reaction that you don't have the money that this will all cost," said Naruto with a sigh, "but you look like a trustworthy sort of guy who truly cares for his student. So if you will sign an agreement to pay me the price in full by the end of the exams, then I will operate immediately, and he will be up and about good as new after a few days' rest." "Yes," said Guy as he wiped the tears from his eyes. Naruto pulled out a scroll that he had multiple copies of, which were the simple terms of future payment, which stated that if the money was not paid in full, then fees would be added and then organs would be harvested if no attempt of payment was made so as to make his money back in some way. It may seem gruesome, but those organs would help others, so it was kind of a chaotic neutral issue if you thought about it in the broad scheme of things. Naruto wrote out the price owed, which Guy signed without hesitation, and then Naruto summoned up the door to his operating room and lifted Lee up in his arms and entered it to operate on Lee. Soon after he left, various shinobi appeared to smooth out the arena for the next fight between the final two genin chosen whose names appeared on the board. Hinata versus Neji. So it has come to this, Hinata. Our long-awaited match. One without the Hyuga main family holding me back from showing you my power, thought Neji to himself, while Hinata looked pissed at seeing her cousin, showing such hate for her in his eyes. Hinata Hyuga was an arrogant woman if there ever was one. Then again, she was from the Hyuga clan, and at least half of them were haughty, because of their dojutsu. Hinata was the daughter of the clan head Hiashi, and she had been taught most of her life that she was better than most people, and those lessons had stuck to her in her youth and had remained into her teenage years. She had been kidnapped at the age of 3 by a Kumo shinobi posing as an ambassador and had been saved by Konoha shinobi. Something in her mind snapped that day, and she wanted to never feel that type of helplessness again in her life, so she trained her mind, as well as her body, to be cruel like many of the rest of the Hyuga main branch members were. She had remembered the day she had to fight her younger sister Hanabi for the right to bear the title of clan heiress, and she had fun beating that little bitch within an inch of her life, so that she couldn't get back up. She then applied the cage bird seal onto her sister's head and laughed as she used it with glee as she saw his sister twitch in pain on the ground. Neji had been there that day since the whole family was made to watch the event and saw that his cousin was truly evil down to the soul. The failed kidnapping of Hinata had ended with Neji's father being sacrificed to Kumo so that they got a Hyuga, but the seal on his head killed him, so they didn't have a live one. Since that day he had nothing more than rage towards his uncle and his cousin, since Hiashi was supposed to be the one sent to Kumo, being the clan head and all, but Neji's father was his twin and looked just like him, so he was sent instead. Because of Hayashi's failure to protect his own daughter, Neji was now without a father and a life of essentially slavery to look forward to the rest of his life under the fear of death with the activation of the seal on his head. But now, the gods had seen fit to offer him a chance to finally vent out his fury towards his cousin, and he would be damned if he didn't act upon it. "We really shouldn't have to fight like this, Neji," replied Hinata with an arrogant tone of voice while getting into her gentle fist stance, which mirrored Neji's. "I am going to regret this in the end. I just know it," thought Neji before the proctor signaled the match to start, and saw Neji move in to dominate the match as fast as possible. On the balcony, Kuretsuchi and Haku watched the match with sharp, keen eyes, which never missed a single action performed by either combatant. Neji was being the aggressor of the two, striking with the purpose of crippling his slightly younger and yet far more pissed cousin. Hinata, for her part, was showing she was quite agile when in a fight and was able to dodge the strikes aimed at the key parts of her body, which showed that even with her arrogant nature, she had taken her training seriously. When she was not dodging Neji's strikes, Hinata tried to deliver her own back in return, and was actually holding her ground against him. This pissed her off, since in her own mind, she should be winning at his point, since Neji was a branch member of the family and as such had far less training, yet here he was, matching her blow for blow with skills that he should not possess. But while Hinata began to grow slowly tired from all this, Neji's sheer hatred for his cousin kept him going strong. So eventually he powered through her attacks and began to inflict damage. As they fought, Naruto appeared via his door since he was done with Lee's surgery. The process, while unorthodox in application, did not take very long since he knew exactly what he was doing. This was not the first or even the last time he would do this. So he took his place back next to his friends, and nodded to Guy, to let him know Lee was fine. Guy smiled and gave him a thumbs up in appreciation. So now that he was back without any form of distraction, he looked down to see Neji kicking Hinata's arrogant ass, and he had to admit that he had not expected this chain of events. "He's damaged her arms pretty badly," whispered Naruto to himself, and saw Neji deliver an uppercut to the girl's face before delivering another blow that sent her flying back onto the ground. Hinata was practically seething in rage at this point, and people could hear her growling in anger. It is said the Hyuga clan's gentle fist taijutsu focuses on shutting down chakra points of their targets using the Byakugan. It has the power to see those chakra points and shut them down with each strike using the chakra in their hands. By hitting the specific points all over the body, a person's chakra network cannot function, or if the Hyuga wishes to be cruel, damage a person's internal organs without actually piercing the body, added Haku while seeing Hinata get up and Neji once more going on his brutal attack on the girl. With his dominance being clear with each passing second, Neji decided to go in for the kill and hit Hinata right at a point in her chest near the heart. The girl gasped in surprise and in pain before stumbling back, clutching her chest and looking at Neji in shock that he would hit such a point in her body. She knew the chakra points of the body almost as well as Neji did, and also knew that point when hit could cause serious damage to the heart muscles, if not cause heart failure if left untreated. Before Hinata could even manage to speak, Neji was upon her again, hitting her in the stomach, making the girl cough up blood, and cause the girl further pain. Neji thought now was the perfect time to finish this, once and for all, but he then fell over in pain as the seal on his head was activated. Hinata had a smug look on her face as her hands formed the hand signal to activate the seal, and as she saw her cousin on the ground crying out in pain, from the agony shooting directly into his brain, she could only picture what horrific punishment her father would give Neji for attempting to strike her down like he did. Who knows? Maybe he would end up like her pathetic uncle and be shipped off to die, but that was a question for later, and Neji's pain was her enjoyment for now. Naruto looked at this with eyes full of disgust, since she was basically cheating. She was given a handicap in the form of the seal on Neji's head. Neji had been moments from victory, and yet Hinata cheated, so he was unable to finish her off, and what pissed him off even more was that all the people watching this weren't even doing anything to try and help the poor lad. See, this was another reason he disliked the arrogance of clans in villages, since they used the whole clan matters excuse to get away with shit like this kind of thing. Naruto loathed Hinata for her attitude towards others, she deemed as beneath her. Plus add in the fact that the little bitch of a princess had used her family style to force him to his knees and then stepped on his head before slamming it to the ground so that he bowed to her only made the hatred he had for her far more understandable. While he wished to deal with the bitch personally in a manner, such as he had done to Kiba, but the thought about it for a moment before he grinned, since this situation provided the perfect opportunity to do what he wanted without repercussions for himself. So with that in mind, he bit his finger and then pointed the bloody digit at Neji. He fired the blood at the tip like a bullet from a flintlock pistol, but without the bang caused from igniting gunpowder. The blood hit Neji in the side of the head, but he was already in tremendous amounts of pain, so a little more from this new source went undetected. The blood seeped into Neji's pores, there it began to infect the lad from the inside quite quickly. Naruto felt as this happened and waited until he had full control before he acted. He forced Neji's body to rise up, still screaming in pain since he could do nothing about the seal at the moment, and pounced upon Hinata and began to pound her face using Neji's fists as the instrument of both their hatred towards the girl. This surprised many to see Neji still attacking while screaming in pain, but eventually when the shock of the situation faded, several Jonin appeared and pulled Neji off of Hinata before Medic Nin arrived to take her away for immediate medical attention. Once the match was over, Naruto clicked his fingers so that the blood he infused into Neji's body became dormant, and he no longer could control it since it morphed into blood type of the person it was inside of. He learned he could do this, and it came in handy from time to time like it did now. This caused Neji to pass out and fall over in exhaustion since his body was far beyond its limits with all that transpired. He was picked up by a medic Nin as well, so as to get medical aid for himself. Minato congratulated the genin who were still here and told them that the finals for the events would be held in 1 month's time. He then had them all pull out a number from a box to determine the matches for the finals, and they went as such. Naruto vs Gara. Kuretsuchi vs Sakura. Haku vs Ino. Shikamaru vs Tamari. Shino vs Tenten. Neji vs Naruto. Choji vs Kankuro. Once the matches were set up and official, Naruto met up with his group, so as to walk with them back to the hotel in the village itself so that they could collect their stuff and head out from the village. But before he joined them to begin the walk back, he called over Guy and told him to wait for a minute before he entered his operating room to collect Lee. Guy grabbed a hold of the sleeping lad and told Naruto he would make sure Lee took it easy for the next couple of days as well as have the money in full by the deadline before he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Naruto then smiled as he finally joined his group, who were still glaring at each other the entire time that they were walking back without a word being spoken by either of them the entire way back. Naruto had tried to get a conversation started to break the awkward silence, but the moment he opened his mouth to try and say anything he felt the killing intent they had towards each other directed at him, and he knew to simply keep his mouth shut if he wanted to survive unscathed. He may be a surgeon capable of gruesome maiming and killing, yet he was a man who knew when to fear women at times like this. Eventually they made their way to the hotel, where Naruto separated from the girls since he could sense they were still pissed at one another, so he was not going to get in their crosshairs. He left a simple note that explained that he would meet them at the front gate by 8 p.m. to take them back home so that at least they had a proper departure time set. So Naruto set out to find something to eat since he had been eating dried meat for the past few days, and he wanted a proper meal to leave this village on. So he searched for a place to eat at, and finally decided on a barbecue restaurant that he had seen in his youth, but never was able to go inside since him and his mother never had the money to pay for it. He went in and sat at a table before a woman came and gave him a menu. He ordered what he wanted and waited for a bit until she came back with his order. The meat was raw, but then again there was a mini grill built into the table, so he could cook it there. So he did just that and enjoyed his meal in peace. He left a good tip and paid for the meal up front before he left to find something to pass the time until they left the village. He found a quiet place to sit for a spell and write out messages for various people that he summoned crows to deliver for him with the utmost haste since timing was essential for this matter. He smiled as the last one took off with the message he wrote out and then sighed a relief that he could finally relax for a few hours before he set out. Yet the second he got comfortable his gut went off like firecracker and he moved just in time to dodge a swipe of a clawed hand that sliced large chunks out of the tree he had been resting under. Naruto quickly got to his feet as he rolled out of the way from the surprise attack and got a good look at the person that attacked him out of the blue. She had long, spiky, untamed brown hair, vertical slit-like pupils, elongated canine teeth and nails. She had what appeared to be fang markings on her cheeks, as well as markings over her eyes and a dark shade of purple lipstick on her lips. She wore the standard outfit of a konoha shinobi consisting of flak jacket and a black suit underneath with the sleeves rolled up and bandages around her legs. I am gonna guess by your physical appearance that you are an Inuzuka, sighed Naruto since he recognized the appearance of those who belonged in that particular clan. The woman did not respond at all to his assumptions, she just stood there and growled in rage. And judging from your rage towards me, I am gonna guess that you are Kiba's mother, said Naruto as he got his cane ready for the fight that was most likely to happen. He had crippled the woman's son beyond any sort of medical care, so it was a fair assumption that she was here to do to him what he had done to Kiba. You will pay for what you did to my son, she snarled. Before we proceed with, well, whatever it is you plan to try and do, said Naruto as he pulled out a medium-sized vial of his blood and began to toss it up and down in his hand. Can I at least get your name? Sure, why not? Responded the woman angrily, my name is Inuzuka. Remember it as I rip your body to fucking shreds. Not one to gloat or kill without good reason, said Naruto with a glare of his own, but are you sure that you wish to go down this road? You have a chance to simply leave here. I have no quarrel with you and as such I don't want to hurt you. You seem to be under the assumption that I am alone in this, said Sum with a sinister grin as she howled out in a manner that people miles away heard her. Within moments, Naruto was surrounded by at least 7/8 of the entire Inuzuka clan who were all there to join Sum in her vengeful attack on Naruto. Those who were not here were the ones who were too young or old or were on missions away from the village entirely, so weren't here to aid Tsume in her vengeance. When you hurt one of our family, then you must deal with the rest of us. Well shit, said Naruto to himself, since he did not see this coming when he did to Kiba as he did. He never had to fight off an entire clan before, and while he was confident in his abilities, he did not want to fight them like this, since he was not one to fight those who have not pissed him off. Even now these people were here, since he had crippled one of their own, and he could understand that since he would have done the same. But before he could try and calm the crowd down in some manner, they all attacked in unison. This made him suffer a flashback of the moment in time when he was nearly killed by a pack of wolves when he was 7. Now as he saw them charge him, he looked at Tsume, who had murderous rage in her heart, and activated his haki in full. The effect was immediate, with the effects being amplified by their animalistic instincts. From an outside appearance it would seem that they were simply afraid of one single person, yet what their instincts showed them was a shadowy figure of a monster that towered all of them in size, with the will to kill them if push came to shove. Tsume, her family, and their canine companions fell to their knees in a cold sweat as they looked down in fear. They couldn't even look at Naruto in the face as he used this ability, since it was so potent. Naruto walked over to where Tsume was kneeling and used his cane and placed it under her chin to raise it up so that she looked at him. Tsume looked him in the eyes, and at first she was expecting the same type of murderous rage she had towards him to be there, yet what she saw surprised her entirely. There was no anger or hatred in his eyes, only understanding. "I know why you did what you did," said Naruto with a serious face, since he honestly did, since any woman worth their salt would do the same thing for their child. "Yet I don't wish to harm you, since I have no quarrel with you." "Then why did you cripple my child?" growled Tsume. It took all her willpower to even muster up the courage to growl, and it affected her body, as her eyes began to tear up from it. "I did it out of vengeance," said Naruto simply, his face devoid of all emotions, since this was a serious case. "What did my clan ever do to you?" "Your clan has done nothing to me," said Naruto as he shook his head, "but your son did, and it was the reason why I did what I did." "What could my son have possibly done to warrant such a crippling blow be dealt to him in the gruesome manner that you did it?" "Let me explain it to you," said Naruto as he glared in anger, as the memories of the things Kiba did to him infuriated him as they came to the forefront of his mind. "I was born in this village. I had nothing more than the name my mother gave me and the bare minimum of anything else. Yet I was happy, since I had a mother to love me with all her heart. Times were tough for us, since we were so low class in the village that even if we died no one would know or even care about it. I tried to make friends, but no one wanted me as a friend. Your son and his own group of friends, that consisted of the other clan heads' children, saw this as the perfect chance to bully and harass someone without any form of repercussion. Who would believe the word of a child? No one knows over the child of a prestigious clan member, and they knew it. So they sought me out constantly to harass and bully me for months, which at first wasn't too bad, but it gradually got worse to the point that they physically hurt me. My pain was their enjoyment, since I could not fight back." "That isn't true," said Tsume softly. She couldn't believe that her son that she had raised would do such a thing to another human being like that. But she could not lie to herself over the fact that her son had gotten fairly arrogant over the years, and despite her best efforts to snuff it out, it persisted to this day. "Oh, but it is," said Naruto as he held up his hand and pulled off his glove. Tsume saw a massive scar that went right down the center of his hand that looked like a stab wound scar, but judging by the size and the irregularities of the shape, it had to have been multiple stabs, since the end bits were in all directions. This scar had remained, and even his own bloodline could not heal it, since he had gotten it after the scar had solidified onto his hand like it was. The day that solidified my hatred for them was on exactly 1 year after my mother's death. They had found me crying over my mother's grave and took turns beating me black and blue, all the while laughing about how worthless I was, and that Kami herself agreed, and had taken my mother away from me as a sign to simply do the world a favor and take my own life. I had finally had enough, and they grew angry that I mustered up the courage to fight back for the first time in my life. This was the end result, since they held me down and took turns stabbing the very hand I used to throw a punch at them. This scar has reminded me to this day of my hatred towards those who hunted me down like I was an animal to hurt me for their sick amusement. Actions have consequences, and Kiba's have led to this since the boy he scared like this grew up with hatred in his heart and the thirst for vengeance. So it is no one's fault other than his own since he chose to go down that path. I understand, said Tsume in grief that she had failed to see this monstrous side of her son to stop it. But can you heal him? I refuse, said Naruto, since I did this to ensure that the rest of his life, he will be reminded of his greatest mistake, which was hurting me, for his sick amusement. So now he gets to waste away as a useless nothing that he has always claimed I was, without a means to recover or even the means to pass on his genetics. Till one day he will beg for someone to put him out of his misery, and when you Tsume his own mother don't have the heart to end his life, let me know since I have no qualms about doing it. Naruto then kicked Tsume onto her back, which caused her daughter Hana, who was close to her, to growl a bit before she suffered the same way as Tsume had, with tears in her eyes. Now I want to know one thing before I leave here today, said Naruto as he placed his glove back onto his hand to cover up his scar once again. He then pulled out a small vial of blood that he crushed in his hand and felt the liquid flow down his hand onto the cane as it had when he fought Kiba. I may not seem like it with my reputation of killing that earned me the title Surgeon of Death throwing doubt on my claims, but I would rather seek a peaceful resolution to my problems if presented with one over the usual means of violence. I am a doctor and I prefer to heal over killing. I do not seek out enemies to slaughter, yet I will not stand idly by as my friends and loved ones suffer and will do all in my power to protect them from harm. You have let it be known that your clan now has a vendetta against me for my actions against Kiba, which means that you will not only hunt me down, but will also seek out other means to lure me into an ambush to kill, since that is how you shinobi operate. This puts those who I call my friends at risk and I can't have that. I don't want to fight against those who have not wronged me personally. Why are you telling me this? Asked Tsume as she weakly tried to move Naruto's foot off her chest, but whatever force had forced her entire clan to their knees had sapped much of her strength as well, so she did not have the power to move it from its position. Because I think ahead since it comes with the territory, said Naruto with a glare, and I have a feeling that if I simply walked away that you would seek to harm my own family in the future if I was ever lucky enough to have one. So I would rather nip this in the bud here and now. That last bit was laced with a fair bit of anger. But he used the blood on his cane and formed into a spear tip and held it mere centimeters away from her throat. Tsume looked at him once more and saw that same shadowy figure her and the rest of her clan had seen when they attacked them. This time it was poised to attack like it was going to swallow her whole in a manner that would leave nothing if it did. So I will ask you this here and now, once and only once. Will you let this vendetta go and forgive me for seeking my just vengeance? Or must I bloody my hands with your clan here and now, going down the lines of succession until I find someone who will? Tsume looked at him with utter shock that seeped deep into her very soul, since she knew that he was telling the truth when he said that he would kill them one by one if push came to shove. In a sick, twisted way, she could respect that since the boy had come from nothing and had overcome everything life had to throw at him to obtain the balls and threaten an entire clan known for their ferocity. She weighed the option given to her in her mind and thought it out fully. She knew that whatever power this kid had to subdue her clan like this would eventually have to end, since all powers required energy of some source and his would eventually run out. So with that being said, she had no idea how long that would take or even how many of her family would die before then. Her worst fear was that in the end, their clan would end up, like the Uchiha, with nothing more than a few members that would then be tasked with repopulating the clan towards greater numbers. While she would always hold anger towards the man who crippled her son, she was the clan head and had to think of it as a whole and not just one person. So in the end, she simply nodded her head to show that she agreed with his offer. With that, Naruto retracted the blood from his cane and felt as it seeped into the pores on his arm. He held his hand out to help her up to her feet. Once she was there, he began to walk away from the clan, who all backed away from him, since any man who could force an entire clan to submit like that was not someone worth fucking with. Many had heard what Naruto had said to Tsume about his actions towards Kiba, and most if not all of them agreed to themselves that if they had been in the same situation that they would have done as he had if given the chance. Tsume saw Naruto disappear into the distance, and as she saw him disappear from sight, a single thought came to her mind. She would question her son on his actions as a young child. She would do it in a way that he could not lie to her, and if Naruto was telling the truth, she would let this vendetta go since his actions were not only legal given the fact they had been part of the Chunin exams and genin were known to die in them, but she would have done it too. She mentally prepared for that talk she was going to have with her son, all the while in the back of her mind, she knew that Naruto was telling the truth on the matter. Naruto had checked his watch and saw that even with that random ambush that ended in his victory, not much time had gone by. So he began to walk around to try and find something to do since he had time to waste until he met up with the rest of his group and left the village with them. And yet no matter where he walked he could not find anything worth his time and as such just kept walking. Just when he had assumed that he would remain bored until the moment where they all left he heard a voice call out his name from the distance. He saw a man who was clearly a Hyuga, which Naruto could clearly see from the attire as well as his eyes. He saw that the man was carrying a folder in his hands, which made Naruto wonder what it was. "Hold on for a moment, young man," said the man as he caught up to Naruto. Once he did, he took a second to catch his breath since he had full-on sprinted to find Naruto once he heard about where he was located. "Are you the one known as the Surgeon of Death?" "That I am," said Naruto as he faced the man fully. He saw no hiate or bandana on his forehead, so he was a main branch member. "What can I do for you, good sir?" "My daughter was hurt recently and is in need of immediate medical attention," said the man. "I was told by the head doctor at the hospital that only someone of Tsunade's skill would be able to help her since the damage was too extensive. The problem is that Tsunade is not in the village and it would take too long for her to come back and help her. I heard that you were in the village and had various members of my family seek you out so I could find you." "Well, I'm happy to help if you are willing to pay my fee," said Naruto, "and I am guessing what you have, there is her medical charts, so that I can look over them and see exactly what needs to be done to aid her." "That they are," said the man as he handed them to Naruto. While he was loath to have to pay what he assumed would be far higher prices for medical aid than what he would regularly pay for in the Konoha hospital. Yet the Surgeon of Death had an amazing record when it came to medical field, so it was an easy pill to swallow his pride. "May I ask your name?" said Naruto as he took the file to look over it. "My name is Hiashi Hyuga," said Hiashi with a bit of arrogance in his voice like it was a privilege for someone like Naruto to know his name. "And my daughter Hinata is the one in need of medical aid." "Oh," said Naruto as he looked over the file he was given. Apparently Neji had done far more damage than even he thought possible using just his hands and saw why someone of his medical skill was needed to fix her up. "So the cheater requires aid." "Excuse me," said Hiashi in a slightly pissed tone. He didn't like hearing his daughter insulted like Naruto had just done. "I called your daughter a cheater, my good sir," said Naruto as he handed the file back to him since he saw all he needed to see. "How dare you?" shouted Hiashi in anger. "Do you know who you are speaking to?" "The father of a cheater," said Naruto with a smirk. "Yes, I know who you are. I am a Hyuga and you will give me the respect I deserve." "So what if you are a Hyuga?" asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. "I am not from this village, nor do I care if you are from a clan. We all have the same organs and weaknesses, and while I will admit that your eyes are able to see what mine can't, I am a doctor and know how to do what you do without them. You're not special in my book. You filthy commoner," shouted Hiashi, whose face was starting to turn red in anger that this brat had insulted his entire clan. "And yet I am a filthy commoner that you spent so long seeking out to aid your cheating daughter," said Naruto with a chuckle. "My daughter is not a cheater as you claim. She fought her own cousin in the Chunin exams and nearly lost. Before he could win she used a seal that I hear was put on him years ago to subdue him. That, sir, is called a rigged fight, and as many people know that is called cheating, so your daughter is a cheater." Naruto could honestly see where Hinata had gotten her arrogance from if this was how her father acted to people. "Enough," said Hiashi through strained teeth since this conversation was getting out of hand. "Will you help my daughter or not?" "Oh, I will help her," said Naruto with a wave of his hand. "That was never an issue, it's just that she is a cheater and I wanted you to know it." "Keep your opinions to yourself," said Hiashi as he took a deep breath to calm himself. "Noted," said Naruto with a frown. "But before I head to the hospital to help your daughter there is something you must know. The damage done to your daughter's organs is beyond repair, and requires new ones to replace them." Now while most people who come to me for an organ transplant wait for a bit, while it get the proper one they need, so as to complete the operation, your daughter does not have that kind of time. So you have to make a tough decision here since the only way she will survive is if you sacrifice someone else since the organs she needs are vital ones that people can't live without. And the organs needed have to be from a close family member, such as a brother, sister, or cousin. So ask yourself if you are willing to kill someone else to save your cheating daughter's life. Hiashi took all this information in stride and growled at the added insult on the end. He thought hard about what Naruto said, and his eyes opened wide since he had the perfect person to sacrifice so that his daughter may live. Please head to the hospital, said Hiashi with determination in his voice. I'll get what you need. Some family, said Naruto to himself as Hiashi rushed off to get who he was going to get. You can feel the love within it. Naruto then walked towards the hospital, where he was met by a few branch members who were there to protect the room Hinata was in while she awaited her surgery. Hiashi had told them that Naruto was coming to help Hinata. He walked into the room and sat in a chair in the corner and pulled out a journal and began to scribble in it. Hinata was fast asleep since she was saving her strength, so she was unaware of the added presence. Soon enough Hiashi arrived with Neji, who was bound and gagged as he struggled feebly to try and break free from his bindings. Is this how your family works? Said Naruto with a frown. You sacrificed the one to beat your daughter so as to wipe away the shame of her losing. I brought you what you required, said Hiashi angrily as he shoved Neji forward. Neji fell forward and landed on his stomach and began to growl in anger towards Naruto as well since he would not go so easily and would fight like a man possessed the second he was out of these bindings. Now heal my daughter. Okay, said Naruto as he pulled out 2 different receipts. Now I am willing to offer you a bit of a deal here. Since this young man is going to die, I wish to keep the organs that are not needed so as to transplant into others who will need them in the future. If you agree to that, then you will receive a discount. Otherwise you pay full price. Do whatever you want to the boy, said Hiashi with a snarl, but I demand his eyes back. That is non-negotiable. Fine, said Naruto with a shrug, since I don't really care for them. I do better with my own, thank you. You dare mock our dojutsu? Your dojutsu is fine against others, but I am able to slice your arms off from a distance, which makes it a moot point since you can't get close enough to do any real damage to me. But we are not here to discuss what ifs, we are here to heal your daughter. Now I want payment as soon as I return with her, which you have my word as a doctor that I will heal her and return her safely. I just have to perform the surgery in my own operating room. So let me get this done and over with while you go and collect my money. Naruto then pulled out a needle and stabbed Neji with it in a pressure point to make his body go numb so that he wouldn't fight back. He summoned his door and picked up Hinata and walked her through it and placed her on the operating table. He then walked back out and grabbed Neji and walked back into his operating room, but not before turning his head to glare at the man who would kill his nephew, just to save the life of his monster of a daughter. He then closed the door and it disappeared behind him. Once inside he injected Hinata with a drug to make her sleep as well as Neji. He then proceeded to operate on Hinata. He had lied when he said that she needed transplants since all the damage done to her he could heal, it just took some time to do it. But with the help of shadow clones he was able to cut the time down to a fraction since they all worked on separate organ each. Once done with, he put her back together and deactivated the room. Once put back together he smirked as he pulled out a container that he then opened up. Inside of it was a small syringe filled with a gray liquid that he took out and injected into Hinata. This was a virus, one that was made to be undetectable as well as slow growing. What it would do over time, which if his tests and calculations were correct would be within the next year, she would go blind. But not only that, but her muscles would begin to atrophy as well, all leading her to become a weak heiress and booted from her so prized position of power since she will lose the strength to maintain it. She could still get pregnant, but the way her body would grow weak over the following year, she would die in childbirth if she ever even attempted to do so. In this way the child had a chance to not learn her mother's arrogance since she would not be alive to teach it to her daughter. Once everything was done with Hinata, he walked over to Neji who he had placed into a chair and injected him with adrenaline to wake him back up. Neji woke up with a start and began to wildly swing his arms around in a rage. Naruto opened his palm for a second before he closed it, doing so grabbed Neji's arms with his wires so that he couldn't move from his spot. "Please calm down," said Naruto simply. "I won't let you kill me so that arrogant bitch will live," he shouted with all the rage he could muster. "I'm not going to kill you," said Naruto simply with a raised eyebrow. "Bullshit," said Neji, who was not buying it. "I heard what you said to Hiashi. And yet I healed Hinata already," said Naruto as he pointed towards her unconscious form, "and I did it without harvesting your organs to do so." "So then why am I here?" said Neji with questioning eyes that were still filled with rage. "You don't remember me, do you?" said Naruto as he shook his head. "Can't quite say I do," said Neji. Naruto didn't say anything else, but he removed his glove from his scarred hand and held it up for Neji to see with his own eyes. Neji looked at it in shock since he remembered Naruto via that scar alone. He had been there that day, not to hurt the poor boy like the others, but since it was his duty to protect Hinata since he was a branch member and she was a main. He had watched as they had stabbed him in the hand repeatedly. He had to leave with the group when they did, but he had left Naruto, who at this point was crying while bleeding over his own mother's grave, with some bandages to help seal up the wound. "I can tell it by your eyes," said Naruto as he saw it, "that you remember me. You were literally the only person in this entire village other than my mother to help me in some way, shape or form. To you it might seem small, but to me it meant the world since no one else gave a damn about me. So what do you plan to do with me?" asked Neji, who was no longer afraid of Naruto since the man was not hostile to him. "I plan to repay you for what you have done," said Naruto as he retracted the wires. Neji felt them loosen from his arms and rubbed them since it itched quite a bit. "But all I did was give you some bandages," said Neji with a confused look in his eyes. "I don't see why you would help me like this." "It's not that I am talking about," said Naruto as he laughed. "You see, I have a vendetta against those who hurt me all my childhood, your cousin included. I had plans in play to get said vengeance against them, yet you did it for me when it came to your cousin. So it is only fair that I repay you for taking the full force of the repercussions of the event. So what do you have in mind to help me? As you heard, you are all but dead to the clan since they think that I am going to chop you up to save her life, but that is not what is going to happen. So what I am going to do is give you a fresh start, the likes that I myself have had when I left this village to seek a life elsewhere." "But what about the seal on my head?" said Neji since he knew that he could never be free with it on his head. "Can you remove it?" "Not by normal means," said Naruto with a smirk. "What do you mean by that?" asked Neji, who was far more confused than he was before. "What I am going to tell you stays between us," said Naruto as he looked at Neji with a look that promised pain if he told a soul about it. Neji understood and simply nodded his head. "I have a means to clone your body. But it will just be your body since seals are not genetic. Once fully formed I can transfer you into it, fully free from the seal on your head. But while I am doing so I will make a few alterations, so that you can hide your identity, such as different natural hair color and pupils in your eyes while still being able to use your Byakugan." "And how am I to know that you are telling me the truth about all this?" asked Neji, who once again was not fully believing what Naruto had said. "I understand that trust is earned," said Naruto with a sigh, "so I will tell you something that I have never told anyone else. Not my closest of friends, or even my girlfriend. I will trust you with my secret if you will trust me enough to help you live a life worth living." "What is this secret of yours?" asked Neji, who was genuinely wondering what it was that he could be hiding from so many people. "I am the bastard son of Minato Namikaze," said Naruto with a growl since he never liked to say that, since the man was no father of his after all he had done to him. Neji looked at him entirely shocked by what he had heard. But, how? Was all Neji was capable of saying since his mind was trying to process it. How was the son of their Hokage treated so badly like he was? Yet he couldn't say any more since Naruto once again stabbed him with a drug to put him asleep. Once he was out of it, Naruto pushed open the secret door he had and entered into it. Inside the room was multiple tanks filled with liquids of all sizes. The smaller ones were cloning individual organs that would then be transplanted into the person they were made for, while the larger ones, of which there were only 3 of them, were used for entire people. He stripped Neji of his clothes and put him in one of the pods, so that his genetics could be cloned in the machine next to it. Naruto saw the machine turn on and saw his genetic makeup. He punched in a few things to change his appearance, but other than that there was no need to change him. Before he had put Neji into the pod, he had made sure to take Neji's eyes since Hiashi wanted them. Once the secret door was closed, he picked up Hinata and walked her out of the place and put her back into her hospital bed in Konoha. He waited there for a bit until Hiashi showed up, where Naruto handed him a vial with Neji's eyes. Hiashi gave him the money that was owed and once paid in full, Naruto saw that it was near the time he had set for their departure. So he set out and met his teammates, where they then went through his door, so that he could take them home to prepare for the last portion of the exams. A day later, Naruto had decided to use the day before he headed to the Kine residence, since he had sent a message to them that he would come tomorrow to seek out a plant he had been meaning to find yet never had the chance to do so since he had so much on his plate for the past several months. He had thought now was the perfect time to do so since Haku was still not in a talking mood for reasons that he could not understand. Luckily for him though, Zabuza had provided that bit of information shortly before he left to find the plants he was seeking. Turned out Haku and Kuretsuchi had gotten into a heated argument over the fact that Kuretsuchi was apparently in love with him since he had saved her life in the past, a fact that made Naruto facepalm himself since he had not seen the obvious signs and it made him feel like an idiot that he didn't see the very clear signs. She called Haku out on stealing her man from her, which then got into a heated argument with Haku boasting that she slept with him, and then things escalated from there. Now the two of them had a bet going on that whoever beat the other in the exams would be his girlfriend, and to make sure there was no cheating on the matter they agreed to not talk to him about it. Apparently that rule did not apply towards Zabuza since Haku had gone directly over to his place to stay at for the month and told him all about it. Naruto groaned since he wondered just when he became labeled as a prize between two women. He wanted to talk Haku out of the whole silly thing, but Zabuza had lost the color in his face when he told Naruto not to do that. Apparently Haku was far more stubborn when it came to what she deemed as serious matters and would use senbon to make people get the point as painfully as possible. So he decided to run this errand instead of risking his health. He had been walking in what seemed like circles for the past few hours, and the map he had did not help at all in the matter. He sighed as he stood there for a minute to ponder exactly what to do right now. He was knocked out of his pondering, though, when he was forced to dodge multiple shurikens sent his way. "Sweet merciful Kami," said Naruto as he prepared himself for the fight ahead, "can't I simply go anywhere nowadays without being attacked one way or another?" "Leave now," said a voice that Naruto could not tell what direction it was coming from. "You are trespassing on land that is not yours." "I am," asked Naruto as he looked at his map again. "To be honest, I am completely lost here. Where exactly am I? This map is not helping me." "You are near the land of Taki," said the voice, which Naruto was able to tell at least came from a woman. "And if you don't leave now then I will kill you where you stand." "Taki," said Naruto to himself, "well then at least I'm in the right area." "Right area for what? This is ridiculous," said Naruto with a sigh. "Could you please show yourself? I'm not here to attack you and I feel silly yelling at what are basically trees." "Fine," said the woman, "but I want you to know that if you try anything, then I will kill you where you stand." "If I had a Ryo for every time I heard that threat," said Naruto to himself under his breath. He heard a rustle of leaves behind him and turned around to see just who exactly he was talking to. The woman was a petite, androgynous, tan-skinned kunoichi who wore an orange clip in her short, layered mint green hair that matched her eye color, which were also orange. Her outfit consisted of a short, sleeveless white midriff shirt with fishnet armor underneath, long white armlets, and fishnet shorts with a short, white apron skirt over it. Her forehead protector was worn on her right arm and also carried a cylindrical object in red wrapping on her back. "Well, hello there," said Naruto with a smile to try and ease the hostile tension she had towards him. "My name is Naruto. May I inquire as to what yours might be?" "My name is Fu," said the now named Fu. "Now explain why you are here. If you are a threat to the village, then I will kill you." "There is no need for such hostility like that," said Naruto as he put his hands up in surrender. He could understand a guard doing their duty to protect their home, so he was not mad at all the threats of murder towards his person like this. "I was fully unaware that there was even a village out here, so I am not trying to invade or attack it." "Then why are you out here in the first place?" asked Fu with a tone that basically said that she didn't believe him. I am trying to find a plant that grows in this area, said Naruto simply. A plant? Asked Fu in a confused tone of voice. You came all the way out here to the middle of the forest for just a plant? Yeah, said Naruto as he pulled the book that he learned about the plant in the first place and began to flip through the pages to find the one he wanted to find. I am a doctor, and this plant will help me in my research. You are a doctor? Asked Fu as she lessened her stance. For some reason she was beginning to believe that Naruto was not a threat, and the demon sealed within her was whispering the same thing as well. Yes, said Naruto, and you being here actually might help me since I have no idea where the hell I am. The map I brought along is of no help. Have you ever seen these plants before? Naruto then moved forward in a non-threatening manner, since he was not trying to have her attack him. He showed her the picture that he wanted to show her and saw as Fu looked at it with recognition in her eyes. I have, said Fu with a nod of her head, but why would you want those? They are highly toxic. That's why I want them, said Naruto before he saw Fu's accusing stare, and no I am not going to use it to poison someone, so put yourself at ease there. Then what possible reason do you have for them? I am trying to make powerful antitoxins, said Naruto as he pulled out a personal journal with all the information he had on the subject. He handed it to Fu to show her that he was telling the truth, and while it was true that she didn't understand about half of what was written since she was not a medic, she saw that he was indeed telling the truth and making antitoxins. And the way it works is that I need to build a base before I build from there. I want these plants since they are considered one of the most poisonous plants around and will make a good base. So can you help me find them? Because I will probably be walking around aimlessly for hours with the slim chance of ever finding them without your help. Well sure, said Fu as she began to lead the way towards where the plants were. She knew that Naruto would not attack her since she sensed no hostility from him in the slightest, and to be honest she was grateful for the human interaction. She had been forced to live out in the woods and guard the village from attack for years and didn't really get to interact with people other than the occasional nin who tried to infiltrate the village. She had a friend in the past by the name of Shibuki, but he had just abandoned her out of the blue and it had broken her heart that her only friend had done so. So she was happy to spend some time with a person who was not hostile towards her. It took about 30 minutes, but they eventually reached the place where the plants grew, which was a marshy area near a cave. Naruto donned thick gloves that he had to handle things like this since the poison could enter through skin contact alone. Once on, he picked quite a few samples and placed them into a container that he then sealed away for later. They then made their way back to where Naruto had met Fu in the first place. I thank you for your assistance, said Naruto with a smile, and I would like to know if there is anything that I could do to help you in return. Huh? Asked Fu, who was surprised that he said that. I was taught that you should help those who help you, said Naruto, and since you helped me find these plants that I was having trouble finding, I wish to offer something to aid you in return. So is there anything that I can do to help you? Well, said Fu as she rubbed the back of her head and smiled a bit in embarrassment since her request seemed kind of silly, if you wouldn't mind, could you stay and talk with me for a while? You are one of the only people who I have got to talk to in years. So a bout of conversation is what you wish, said Naruto with a smile, that I can do quite easily. But since it is rare for you to have such a thing, allow me to make this a better experience for you. Wait right here. I promise I will be back in about 10 minutes, of that you have my word. Naruto then summoned up a door to his operating room, which he entered. This surprised Fu since the action of summoning a door like that was odd to say the least. Yet the door disappeared from thin air, just as quickly as it had appeared. Fu felt a bit sad as it did, since the memories of her only friend leaving that day with the promise to return later only to never return again came to mind. But she would give Naruto the benefit of the doubt since he said he would be back in 10 minutes. So she waited 10 minutes, but he had still not returned, and it made Fu sadder than before since she felt as though she had been lied to for the second time in her life. She felt as tears began to form in her eyes since she feared that she would forever be alone in these woods, stuck remaining the guard dog of a village that hated her for what she had sealed within her. After 20 minutes had gone by from the time of his departure, she was just about to head home when the door reappeared. Naruto then came through with a table in hand, while several clones of himself came with chairs and a tea set that was fancy in design. Sorry for the wait, said Naruto apologetically, I moved my tea set from my house to my office and forgot where I put it. I nearly tore up my house before I remembered where it was. What is all of this? Asked Fu in surprise that he had brought all this just to converse with her. I have learned that some of the best conversations are had over a cup of tea, said Naruto as his shadow clones disappeared once they had set the table. On it was the tea set with hot plate heating up the kettle and had a fancy tin that Naruto opened up to show that it was full of cookies. Fu's mouth watered when she saw them since she had not had a cookie in years and she never knew how much she craved for one until the moment she saw them. Naruto gestured for her to sit and pushed the tin for her to take a cookie at her own leisure. And Fu had to admit that she was happy for the first time in a long time as she took one of the cookies offered and bit into it. She stopped after one bite since it was far more delicious than she had expected. Do you like the cookies? Asked Naruto with a smile as he picked up match and struck it to light it up. He then put it on the hot plate to light it up, and then put the kettle on so that the water could boil. He then spooned out some tea leaves into the 2 teacups he had. They are amazing, said Fu as she took another as she gulped down the first. That they are, said Naruto with a smile, I got them from a bakery in Spring Country. They are a bit pricey, but they are completely worth it in my book. But while you are in a good mood, I have a quick question to ask of you. Why do you live out here of all places? Shouldn't you be in the village? Fu stopped eating her cookie when Naruto had asked that since she feared answering that question. She had always been told most of her life that Jinchuriki were hated throughout the world, and treated far worse than how she was here with the isolation. Now here was a man who had listened to her request of staying and talking to her and she feared that he would hate her if he knew the truth about her. You don't have to answer that, said Naruto since he had thought about it for a minute and recognized the scenario, you are a Jinchuriki aren't you? Fu was speechless that he had figured it out from her lack of answering, and feared that he would just up and leave. No need to fret, said Naruto as he waved his hand to try and ease her fear, I am not going to start hating you simply because of the demon sealed within you. I judge people on their actions not their burdens. Oh, said Fu as she sighed a heavy breath of relief. By this point the water was boiling and so Naruto poured the hot water into the cups to mix with the tea leaves. Naruto and Fu conversed for quite some time, which both of them thoroughly enjoyed since they had a lot in common. They had both been loners for a good chunk of their lives, but while Naruto's life had improved over time, Fu was still confined to her post on the outskirts of the village. Fu explained how she had a friend named Shibuki long ago, but he had just abandoned her. Naruto felt pity for her since he had been the same exact way with the lack of friends and the hatred against him for reasons that he didn't fully understand why it was happening in the first place. Fu at this point had begun to cry since the pain of that day had never left her nor did she have any form of counseling or person to get over her grief. Naruto had cheered her up, though in the end by wiping the tears from her eyes and gave her a hug. She reciprocated it and hugged back hard. Naruto understood that everyone needed at least one friend and he held out his hand and offered to be that one that she needed. She had smiled as he offered and accepted. But their sappy, yet happy moment was ruined when a scythe on a chain came out of nowhere and slammed into the table, destroying not only it but the tea set and the cookies as well. Naruto and Fu looked to see just who the hell had ruined their good time. Standing there were 2 Akatsuki members, which Naruto easily recognized from the red cloud black cloaks. One of them had medium-length gray hair that was slicked back and distinctive purple eyes while most of his chest was exposed as he pulled back his weapon and slung it over his shoulder. The second man was a very tall tan-skinned man with long dark, brown hair. His eyes had an unusual coloring, green irises, no pupils and red sclera. Naruto had done his research after the Akatsuki tried to recruit him, and he knew exactly who these people were. Haiden and Kakuzu. Both deemed immortal in their own way. Oh fuck, said Naruto as he signed in anger as he prepared for the fight that was going to happen. Why they were here was the question. Could he not just have a moment of peace? That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it then like, share and subscribe for the next video as it's going to be more interesting, and also check out my other playlist, hope you would like them too.